We only have 3 members, 4 members here. Thank you, baby. I call this workshop of the Savannah City Council to order. I'm going to ask Alderman Dietrich Leggett to offer a word of prayer.
Let's pray. Most Heavenly Father, we thank you for this day. We thank you for the opportunity that you've given us. Lord, we thank you, Father, for the weather. We thank you, Father, for giving us safety and making it here from where we came from, Father. I ask you, Father, to continue to be the hedge of protection around each and every one of us as we make the decisions that gratify your name. In Jesus' name we pray, amen.
Amen. Thank you. So judging from my suit, we have some challenging weather out there. So we have council members in various states of transit to this location, but we'll go ahead and we will get started. Today we have a workshop agenda, and then we have a special meeting for the purposes of a show cause hearing. That being said, we'll be talking about stormwater infrastructure needs and funding options. We'll be talking about our legislative agenda, and then, if necessary, prior to the special meeting, if the attorney needs a executive session, then we'll have that as well. All right, so Mr. Manager, good morning, and let's proceed.
Good morning, Mayor. Good morning, Council and Mayor. Congratulations on a successful State of the City address last night, and thank you for the recognition of Team Savannah. Today we have 2 workshop items. As the mayor mentioned, one around our stormwater system and some options for how we may fund some of the improvements we know we'll need in that system at a large scale, as well as a discussion and some homework items for council on creating a legislative agenda for your consideration and adoption later this month. So we will begin with our Water Resources Department Service Center with Chief Ron Feldner and our Stormwater Management Director, Zach Hoffman. Thank you, Ron.
Good morning, everyone. Ron Feldner, Chief of Water Resources, and Zach Hoffman, Director of Stormwater Management, is here with us as well. And we're going to walk through a series of slides here today, and you have a few handouts at your seat locations that we will also talk about a little bit, specifically the large map of projects that you have in front of you. The agenda's there with a few acronyms down at the bottom. We have a tendency to utilize those acronyms quite freely in our discussion, so we wanted to make sure you had the ability to reference to that. Once again, our agenda is here and also in front of you. We're going to walk through a series of issues related to our stormwater management program and, of course, answer your questions at the end. I think we start here by 2024 has been a unique year in terms of rainfall events, not just the number of events, but the intensity and extreme nature of a lot of the rainfall events that we saw. And as a result of those rainfall events, we've seen various types of flooding within the city. The first one we want to talk about today is urban flooding. This is what we see most commonly in our neighborhoods, in our downtown area. This is where large amounts of rain come down in a very rapid fashion, overwhelming the ability of the drainage system for whatever reason to be able to accommodate that rainfall and safely convey it downstream. And as a result, we oftentimes get conditions that result in flooding, and we've seen a lot of those incidents this year. Coastal flooding is something that is increasing in its frequency. Back last month in October, we did have a few issues regarding coastal flooding due to very high tides at certain times of the year. And as a result of that, that has an effect, of course, on our drainage system's ability to discharge water out into our marshes and other areas that are affected by tides. This one was the most unique one, I think, this year. In August of 2024 here, we had Tropical Storm Debbie come through. We're going to talk about this event in particular, but this was riverine flooding, which is not something we've commonly seen in Savannah, especially with the Ogeechee River, but it certainly affected us in August of this year when that slow-moving tropical system came through. Going back to those urban flooding events, we've identified a few what we're calling select events here. Late July and then mid-August to late August. Once again, a lot of rainfall in a short period of time, resulting in these urban stormwater flooding events that caused flooding in our streets, flooding in our neighborhoods. And, you know, some of the causes we're showing here on the slide. And our ability to deal with these issues has a lot to do with maintenance, but also necessary capital improvements. The riverine flooding event, Tropical Storm Debbie in August, was the result of quite a bit of rainfall over a couple of day period. Of course, we had urban flooding within the downtown and neighborhood areas, but then of course on the west side we had the Ogeechee River spill out of its floodplain and affect the areas on the west side of town. Once again, these are unique events that have to do with rainfall occurring at a very high intensity over a very large area in the watershed, and then of ultimately coming downstream and creating the condition that we saw, for example, in Bradley Point. So how does this relate to what we're seeing, I guess, climatologically and over time is an interesting slide that I was able to obtain, published by FEMA, and obviously published in the New York Times just a couple weeks ago, showing the frequency and magnitude of the flood declared disasters that we're seeing in the country. And when you look back over the last 25 years, you can see just how dramatic of an increase we're seeing in terms of a trend as it relates to these large flood disasters throughout the country. And I think that we've seen an increase, and Zach can talk more about it when he speaks on the operations side, but more frequent flooding events are becoming more common. And as a result, we have to prepare and set up our operations here in the city to be responsive to these changed conditions that we're starting to see over the last 20 to 25 years. Drainage system resiliency, this gets back to some of the climate change issues that we've been dealing with and sea level rise, things of that nature. As we continue to see these types of events and impacts on the community, we've got to prepare for that through mitigation measures, and that requires expensive upgrades in terms of things like stormwater pump stations, the installations of tide gates, things like that. And then we've also got to start to modify our design standards, making sure that we are factoring in some of these climatological issues that are starting to become part of our daily impacts in terms of flooding events, and making sure that we're preparing for that. I'm going to turn over to Zach now. He's going to talk a little bit about the stormwater management program role and responsibilities and dive into some of the details on those issues.
Thank you, Ryan. Good morning. Again, Zach Hoffman, Director of Stormwater Management for the city. And I just want to take a moment to do a quick review of kind of what the Stormwater Management Department, what our roles and responsibilities are. So we have three main areas of responsibility and service delivery. It's the drainage system operations and maintenance and repair of that infrastructure. I can go through some numbers of what we maintain here in a moment. The regulatory compliance aspect of stormwater management, which is abiding by our federal and state permits. We are a Phase 1 medium MS4, Municipal Separate Storm Sewer System community. And with that, the state, we have certain requirements we have to abide by, compliance, as well as annual reporting of how we are managing that program, which is reviewed by the state. In addition to that, we have our robust capital improvement program. So that's where we're trying to, we put millions of dollars worth of investment every year into the city of Savannah to improve our drainage conveyance and to build in resiliency to our system so that we can handle some of these variable environmental storm events. So with our assets, this is some numbers that change. We kind of track these monthly as the city is growing and expanding to the west, annexations, new developments, new neighborhoods are coming online, new city streets which are being dedicated to us. We are taking those assets that are being created in addition to what we build with capital improvement program, with our capital improvement program. We're adding those assets to our inventory daily, monthly. So right now we're looking at just over 416 miles of pipe that the city of Savannah has to maintain. We have over 147 miles of ditches and canals. That's referred to as that kind of our open system versus that closed system of the pipe network. We have 7 pump stations. Those are critical infrastructure when it comes to our resiliency and ability to convey water out of our city during these major events, which can pump on top of the tide and on top of storm surge and just really builds in that resiliency. We have 6 stormwater detention ponds that we maintain continuously, 31 tide gates, 14,620 catch basin inlets, and 6,423 manholes. Our drainage infrastructure is is aging. We are an old city, the historic downtown area especially, in comparison to maybe new development out west or maybe even to the south side of Savannah that was developed a little bit more recently in time. But some of this infrastructure is extremely aged. The larger photo there is a 102-inch diameter brick line pipe constructed in the late 1800s. We are invested at that point in time. It was a combined sewer and storm conveyance system, and that sewer hydrogen sulfide gas as part of the sewer can have a detrimental effect on that brick mortar of those pipes. So we investigate those, televise those, and line those in cases where we determine that they may be susceptible to a collapse, which is in the top right photo there is kind of an example. That's a CCTV televising camera that can walk up our pipes, and we find stuff like this. For instance, it looks like we got a concrete pipe that at some point in time was probably done as a point repair to then just passed in the background is a brick line pipe that again was probably installed in the late 1800s, early 1900s. That's failing, and that joint between those two, you see roots coming into the system, and all that combines to create not only blockages in the pipe, but also cave-in at the surface may happen in this situation if it's not repaired and then potentially and more than likely lined with a fiberglass resin liner. The bottom right picture, basically a pipe that looks like it's been crushed or some heavy load on it. Significant crack at the 12 o'clock, which is a characteristic sign of that. So not only the system aging, the expansion of the system, but climate impacts with rising sea levels, storm surge, that ebb and flow of the tide, higher tide events, all that relates to the capabilities of our system and how resilient that system is to ever-changing weather events. Another metrics that we keep up with is our work order statistics for stormwater maintenance and operations, and this is our 2024. We had a total report of 141 to date for this year service request, with 41 of those still open, 100 of those closed, and an average time to close of 48 days. And just keep in mind, we'd love to reduce that 48 days average time to close, but some of these can be something we can get out there and fix immediately. Some of these take an investigation, essentially, to figure out what the issue is. If it's a cave-in or something underground, we may need to televise it, clean the line, pull in the contractor. And it's just every one of them can be a very unique situation. So fastest to close, broken storm water catch basin top. Some of those can extend out a little bit longer, though, also, so it just all depends. Some of them are very standard. Being an old city, again, we have a variety of infrastructure in our system. Some of those are basically off the shelf. We can go replace it. Some of them we have to get creative, might have to actually cast our own structure by hand to replace something that's not a standard structure. Slowest to close, cave-in again, which can be a unique situation, but we can secure those with steel plates and that sort of thing, and just the time frame is not as critical. And then clogged storm drain. What's not on here is mowing. We get a lot of mowing maintenance of our ditches and canals, and that's something that can be more of an aesthetic thing, but is a ongoing demand and service request. So this slide kind of refers to the handout, which is a map of our capital improvement projects. These are more of our current and ongoing projects are in the near future to be completed. We keep about a 20-year in advance spreadsheet of our capital improvement program, what we're completing, how much we're spending on a yearly basis on those projects, where we have funding, where we don't have funding. And so this summary here provides that. With our stormwater pump stations, again, we have 7 stations, very critical to our resiliency of our system. To put that in perspective, these stations, the 7 stormwater pump stations can pump 3 million gallons per minute in combined, and which is 4.3 billion gallons per day that we can convey out of the city with these pump stations. And again, that's on top of the tide. It's not tidal dependent like some of our pipe outfalls that, maybe they can convey more at low tide versus high tide that's backing into those lines. So very resilient aspect of our system is our stormwater pump stations, and really need to focus on those and the fact that there was a great investment put into those 20 years ago or more, and at this point in time we are having to invest in improvements to those and upgrades to those. Localized stormwater infrastructure projects, 13 of those, total cost of $22 million. We've got about $4 million worth of funding currently allocated to that. Those are more like kind of your neighborhood improvements, as much as we want to do these big major, capital improvement projects like the brick grant along the Springfield Canal, which is going to, provide improvements essentially that entire drainage basin. We don't want to disregard the improvements we can make in the neighborhoods or in a certain community or street that needs something in a more immediate manner. Yearly capital programs is mainly our cave-in point repairs, as well as our CIPP cured in place pipe lining operations. We do $2 million a year, and that's about 90% funded annually to date. So we are making good progress there, and hopefully preventing those cave-ins as we make improvements to our system as needed. Flood study models is very important to getting our comprehensive stormwater master plan developed. Right now, we've got 20. We've modeled about 10 of those basins. 14 within the city limits are still to be modeled. So critical to our determination of where the improvements need to go. The priority of the improvements tells us how resilient that drainage basin is, and where we need to spend the dollars. And then you have the major drainage basin stormwater infrastructure. That's your brick grant. That's your Springfield Canal expansion and Placentia Canal and improvements, and the Bilbo Canal improvements, which is widening those canals and working from the outfall upstream. And so we have 25 projects on the books, $330 million, but hats off to $135 million of that is funded. That's great. So just in summary, total funding need of what we have on the books, projects we know we want to do, we want to prioritize $402 million. Total funding secured 157. So we're about 39-40% secured funding for those projects we want to do, which again is a big step towards making these improvements. So with that, I'll hand it back to Ron.
Okay, thanks, Zach. Obviously, you've set the table for the stormwater program funding aspects, and I want to talk about that a little bit. Next few slides. The city operates 3 pipe systems, water, sewer, and stormwater. And as the city manager likes to tell us, 2 of those pipes are paid for, water and sewer, but the third one is not. And our water and sewer fees provide dedicated funding for those first 2 pipe systems. And the third pipe system, of course, does not have a dedicated funding source. similar to what we have in water and sewer. So as a result, the funding opportunity here is to try and look for and identify a funding program that can be dedicated to stormwater management so that all of our underground systems have dedicated funding, which will help us obviously deal with the challenges, the issues, and the needs of those various water systems. Our current stormwater program funding strategy involves general fund revenues and our annual budget. SPLOST, of course, has been a huge funding source for capital projects. And then lately we've had a lot of success with the grant programs, of course, the BRIC grant being the most predominant. $40 million grant for the West Side Springfield Canal Basin. And then we still find ourselves at times working on public and private partnerships. And we work with developers to go into cost share arrangements that have served us well in strategic projects such as the Bilbo Canal. Going forward, our potential funding mechanisms, a stormwater utility user fee, that revenue which would be dedicated exclusively to stormwater, and then potentially amortized funding through GFA or the bond market using those stormwater user fee revenues to pay the debt service. The overview of a stormwater utility is shown here. It functions as a user fee-based system, similar to what we have in water, sewer, and sanitation. Those fees are dedicated to the stormwater program budget, just as the water and sewer fees are dedicated to water and sewer operations. And the customer's bill amount is based on their stormwater runoff contribution to the system and the associated service delivery that we, the city, must provide as a result. More overview on the stormwater utility. The more impervious area you have, the parking lot, the rooftop, those areas that don't allow the infiltration of rainfall, the more stormwater runoff you generate and in most cases discharge into the city public drainage system. So therefore, if you have the increased amount of runoff, you have increased service delivery demands that the city must then provide to you. Once again, a stormwater utility provides a dedicated annual revenue stream. Those funds can be used for operations and maintenance, capital projects, all aspects of the stormwater system. And as I said earlier, the revenues can be used to pay for bond and GFA debt service, as well as city match for grants. So a lot of flexibility in stormwater user fee revenues. One critical aspect of a user fee program is that credits are offered if you reduce your amount of runoff contribution or you reduce your service delivery demands. That has a corresponding reduction in your bill. Talking about stormwater utilities in Georgia, it's not a new concept. It's been around for about 25 years now, going back to Griffin in the late 90s. There's 75 stormwater utilities operating in Georgia, plus or minus, today in 2024. And there's actually 7 nearby to Savannah, and we've listed them there on the right. Some of our neighboring jurisdictions here in coastal Georgia and the region. Thought it was appropriate to show some example stormwater utility bills for a neighboring community here, Garden City, because the stormwater utility user fee is really about building equity into how the service is paid for. And the issue here is the more of a contribution and the higher your service delivery demands you have in terms of contribution to runoff and then the city's service delivery, the higher your bill. And that's what's unique about a stormwater utility funding program as compared to general fund taxation when it comes to trying to correlate stormwater services and demands. So what you see here is the single family residential property in Garden City pays $475 a month. And that serves as the basis in terms of the billing units. And each of these other customer types or examples are obviously an increment of what the equivalent residential unit is, as we're showing here. So just a few examples: a fast food restaurant, bank branch, 12, 13 times the amount of stormwater runoff generated, and the corresponding service delivery, the higher bill proportional. And then as you start to get into the much larger customer types, the truck container storage yard, This could be, 10 or 15 acres of just tractor trailer parking with really no taxable value, but it generates a tremendous amount of runoff. And you can see here that there's a corresponding amount of that fee to be paid for the amount of runoff generated from that large container storage yard. And then, of course, as you move on down the line, a large industrial warehouse. This example, I think, is about 1 million square feet between the parking lot and the buildings, paying 344 times what a single-family resident would pay in terms of having equity built in to how the rate structure and program would be set up, and then the corresponding fee of over $1,600 a month. And what you're basically looking at here in this rate structure is $4.75 for each 3,000 square foot of impervious area per month. So that's how that calculation is done. And in this case, I'm not subtracting out any credits, but some of these customer types would be eligible for credits. So we are in the midst of our stormwater utility funding study now. The City Council authorized that consultant on August 8th, and we've commenced work in terms of some of the activities that you see here. I want to point out that we are developing a stormwater education and community outreach program. Some of the slides that you're seeing here today will be a part of that as we take this messaging out into the community and gather citizen input and feedback, probably starting in early 2025, about stormwater management service delivery, stormwater management service level of service increase that might be desired by the community as we continue to see these more significant rainfall events affect our area. We're also going to analyze the cost aspect of what we've historically done on stormwater management expenses. And one of the first things we want to do is establish a stormwater management cost center via Stormwater Utility Enterprise Fund so that we can more accurately track and look after the costs that were associated with stormwater service delivery within our community. And that's something I think we're going to talk about more in the coming weeks. Service delivery assessment, level of service evaluation is all going to be a part of what we're going to do, and then look at how we can develop a financial plan to deal with operations and maintenance and capital going forward in terms of what this overall program would involve, and of course what the future fees would be if the City Council made the decision in the future, as we show on the last line there, to move forward with a stormwater utility program as a funding option within our overall blended funding strategy to deal with all aspects of what we've got to provide here to the citizens. And that leaves us with our questions. So we are ready to address any questions that anyone has, and we'll start over here with Ms. Bell.
Mr. Manager.
Yes, sir. We're ready to take council's questions. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Any questions from council?
Yes, sir.
I think Alderwoman Bell, then
So,
Alderman Leggett.
talk for a minute about the Stormwater Utility Enterprise Fund. How would that work?
Well, you have a, it's a formal financial entity within the city finance operation, just like the water and sewer has an enterprise fund. That way, when the water and sewer revenues come into that enterprise fund, it's then applied towards the expenses of water and sewer services throughout the city. So in the case of the stormwater program, you would stand up a enterprise fund for stormwater service delivery and financial means. And as the revenues from a future stormwater utility fee came in, that would then fund the expenses of the stormwater management program. So it would operate very similar to the water and sewer utility as we've set it up historically.
And if I can add on to that, Alderman, we have several enterprise funds. We have a water and sewer enterprise. We have a parking enterprise. We have the Civic Center enterprise and a sanitation enterprise. For water and sewer, for the most part, the fees that we collect from our water and sewer customers pay for all of the services in water and sewer. Though we may decide to, contribute some capital dollars either through a SPLOST or through a fund to do some major work that would offset any cost to ratepayers. For sanitation, we have an enterprise fund, but the general fund property taxes and sales taxes, also a significant amount goes to subsidizing that sanitation fund as well. And I think that in the eventuality or potential for a stormwater fund, we would begin with largely subsidizing the operations of that stormwater fund as the way that we do it now with general funds, but being able to build up an allowance for our ability to bond out for major capital work.
Let me add to that a little bit. It's a business, essentially, and ideally the business runs like a business. It ultimately should take care of itself. It should be able to fully fund itself. And I think for what we've been talking about, particularly after the storms, remember we came in quite frustrated after 3 consecutive storms that dumped a lot of rain, and I think the Lord was hearing us today and dumped more rain on us. But that we needed to make a significant commitment long-term to stormwater improvements that have to be done. We can keep playing it by happenstance through general fund, but I think we're all very clear that that's just not the long route to be able to take care of this. We're always playing catch up. We're never really investing in any major way. I think ultimately we could always talk about with the manager about how to fund it. But right now, the fact is that, again, we saw this summer how real it can get. Mr. Luggett.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Ron or Zach, prior to the first storm when we had the flood event, right after that, the street started cracking and we saw more sand coming out of those cracks. You know why that's happening throughout the district? There's more in the second district I'm seeing it now because we have all the cones set up in different areas that are supposed to address those.
Yeah, I wonder if the flooding of the street somehow compromised the structural integrity of the pavement, and then maybe there was some damage then to the water line as a result of that, because I would envision the water line creating condition that would push up sand through some type of failure in the street itself. So if there's a situation like that, we probably need to investigate both the water line as well as the storm sewer line to make sure that we understand which one might need the repair.
Yeah, I'm addressing it now because there's so many of them that are popping up, and we're sending in 311s, and the city staff is coming out and they're investigating them. They're sending out the HBO truck and everything else just to see what the issue is. But I just, after looking at your photo, I'm just not sure what's happening.
I think the flooding of the street and being submerged for a period of time can certainly start to compromise some of the structural integrity of the asphalt. So that may be a situation where something like that occurred and weakened that area locally to create the problem that you're seeing.
It's weird that we're having this conversation right now and we're getting photos on our phones of people sending pictures in front of their house and it's already flooded to the front step. So I thank you guys for the presentation.
Zach and I may need to leave the podium and get to work.
Any other questions? We'll go Alderwoman Lanier, then we'll go to Alderwoman Wilder Bryant.
Okay. Thank you. Thanks for the presentation. On the urban flooding, with the paving that we're doing, street paving, parking lot paving, whatever kind of paving, if we use the permeable material, will that help us, or do you have any numbers or data
You talk about your downtown projects.
how that impact drainage?
So, yes, we promote green infrastructure, low-impact development infrastructure, and we incorporate that on new development projects as part of our Coastal Stormwater Supplement. Local design manual handles some of that. So we work with developers to implement as much of that as possible, and there's certain standards they have to meet. The city itself has actually a pervious paver program for the downtown historic district. So in situations where you have those, development right up to the edge of the right of way, you don't have setbacks or that sort of thing like you do in the historic district. Some of those infill developments don't have space to put in stormwater detention or infiltration, pervious pavers, and that sort of thing. So they can actually pay into a fund to meet the requirements of the permitting, which then allows the city to hold a fund to where enough money builds up into that to then go take a city street and convert it over to a pervious paver street. And we have a couple of those throughout downtown.
Is that more expensive?
It is more expensive than just asphalt.
But in the long run,
And in the long run, it has a maintenance aspect of it. So we factor that into our rates for that program, and we constantly are having to relook at those. That's through our revenue ordinance is where that program lies. And so occasionally we do have to review that, see where construction cost and maintenance long-term costs are, and we may need to adjust those rates for that. But that is a program we have, and you know the perviousness is a very, very good water quality aspect. First flush traps those pollutants, infiltrates into the ground, lets nature do its thing. When we get these major rainfall events, multiple inches of rainfall, you know, they overwhelm those systems. So it's not a fix-all, but it does take that first flush of the rain event, which is a lot of your pollutants that may be on the surface and that sort of thing, and trap them and treats the water essentially. But you still get runoff. You still get runoff that has to be handled.
okay, thank you. Mr. Manager, where are we with the assessment, the drainage assessment? I remember when Mr. Lloyd was here and we had some funding going towards the drainage system assessment on the west side.
And I think these are your floodplain,
The basins.
your basin studies, if you want to talk about those.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
We've also got the millage projects too.
Yes. So we are on our way to a comprehensive stormwater management plan. And to have that plan is essentially to look at these individual major drainage basins within the city and model those basins. With that modeling, we can determine certain rainfall events, where the flooding will occur, and what improvements may need to be built into that drainage basin to lower those flood elevations or remove them completely. So that's suddenly, once we model a basin, we can see, oh, well, this culvert here is undersized. It's a restriction. This is the restriction in the system. If we improve it, then we can see what that improvement provides. And essentially, we typically do these models where we understand the existing conditions of that day, but then also we build into the model what improvements in the future need to be made. And we typically look at 100-year conveyance or 10 to 12 inches of rainfall in a 24-hour period. We want to be able to effectively convey that without flooding. And so those are the improvements that we put into the model to show that we can, if we built this, that's what conveyance we would achieve.
And where are we with it now?
So right now, one of the slides mentioned that we've modeled about 10 of our 24 major basins. So we have about 14 left to do.
Okay,
and we're
sounds good.
actively working on a couple of those. Some overlap, of course, with the county and the city within a certain drainage basin. Drainage basins don't follow municipal limits, so there are some overlaps. And so we work with the county to, combine efforts on some of those, and we're actively working on some of those now.
10 we've completed are a lot of within the city, entirely within the city. So most of the city's done. Now we're trying to work some of the peripheral areas as well, where it goes into another jurisdiction.
Where it's in and out of,
So we
different
focused a lot
jurisdictions.
within our city limits already.
Right. And you'll see and one thing I would mention with the capital improvements you see on that map that we did as a handout, you don't see as many on the south side. South side's newer, infrastructure. It does a little better than the older historic infrastructure downtown. But also, we haven't quite gotten a model, a comprehensive model of the south side. So we're working on that. Right now, we're working on Chippewa-Harmon drainage basin, which is kind of Oglethorpe Mall area, that kind of portion of town. Then we got the Wilshire Basin we're working on too right now to model it and working our way south. So again, once we get that model completed, then we know what improvements where they need to be and how big they need to be and that sort of thing. And then we start trying to generate allocated funding for those improvements.
Okay, two more quick questions, please. How do we measure the customer runoff?
Is that for the ERU?
Well, for a future fee, it's based on the amount of impervious area you have on your property. That's how we established the cost model. So the more impervious you have on your property, the more fee you would pay. Now, how the initial fee is set for a single-family residential property, which is the basis of the whole program, is a decision of City Council. And as was said earlier, we could fully fund the stormwater management program at a higher per residential unit cost, or we could fund a portion of the stormwater program through a reduced fee. But we set the fee based on the needs of the program, the cost of the projects, and then the customer's willingness to pay and the City Council's direction on where we should dial in that cost. Similar to water and sewer rates, there's information that we provide to you regarding the basis of the rates, but ultimately at the end of the day, it's a little bit of a massaging process to get it where it's appropriate for all interests.
And if you look at the example in the handout from Garden City, their billing unit is 3,000 square feet of impervious area, and so every additional 3,000 square feet of impervious area is another, in their example, $4.75 a month charge.
But $4.75 was set by the city and the City Council in their rate structure, just as they set water rates.
Okay. The very last thing, we had partners on certain projects, like around Bilbo. Who are those partners, and how do we enter into that type of agreement?
So there's been multiple development agreements the city has entered into. I think a lot of times those are maybe water and sewer type agreements, but it also relates to stormwater. In certain cases, for a project to be feasible, the downstream stormwater conveyance has to be to a certain level. And that's what happened at Bilbo. For a parcel south of President Street there, for instance, they needed 100-year conveyance out to the Savannah River. Well, to have 100-year conveyance to be able to develop that parcel for other environmental permitting reasons, the canal needed to be expanded past their property. So we were able to work with that developer, that property owner, and go into an agreement. And in that case, I think the property owner contributed $2 million towards the construction of the canal improvements.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Thank you, Alderwoman Wilder Bryan.
Mr. Fellner and Mr. Hoffman, thank you for your presentation. Just want to, when you give these PowerPoints, Mr. City Manager, Mr. Mayor, and Council, I am just overwhelmed when I can check off some of the things that you've actually done, and it's just not some reading in front of us. So this goes hand in hand with the presentation that was done by Ms. Bates, developing community outreach and gathering more information. A lot of times when we do things, it's like Interpol, and people just want to know what's going on. And so, but in all sincerity, if I had to vote today, I would definitely vote for this runoff generated utility fee. The mayor talked about it briefly. I know y'all ironing and tweaking it out, and so I commend you for that, Mr. City Manager. We, in keeping with how this administration has been going on, this is what we do. We want to leave some legacy concerns and offer some solutions. So I just have a couple of questions, and it's on your drainage system. If you could pull that, this one up for me, please.
If you click out, just click away.
Go ahead, you got it.
Does this go back? Yeah.
Yeah.
There you go.
And so the question that I have,
That was the one with the infrastructure pictures. Keep going. There you go.
that one,
Go back one.
go back to the drainage system. If you look at the third picture, and you were talking about spreadsheets, and I'm sure you're doing this, but I would just want to know when the last time you actually did a check, because on that one it says
September the 9th, September the 30th, 2018. And so when we talk about being proactive, there is a crack there, right? And so not only are we trying to make sure that that there is some structural integrity, I see that you have people that are checking that. So how often do you check? And I can wait to make sure that it's safe first to go and check, and we do something about the structural damage that you showed us, and that was on 2018. I would like to know what was done about that. We want to keep on doing the things that make Savannah better,
Alderwoman,
and so I appreciate that.
Alderwoman, if you pull your mic down,
Okay.
There you go.
Okay, thank you. I just, if you didn't hear me, I want to make sure that not only the structural integrity is not at risk, we want to make sure that the people that are entering these drainage, that they are taken care of too. So I would want to know how often we are inspecting these drains, and that would answer a lot of the questions of garbage and trash and things that end up in a storm that makes it hard to do what its intended function is to do. Just want to commend you that, and just thank city staff for connecting the dots and making sure that when this is in play, and we want to make sure that we do need a dedicated enterprise department funding so that it's self-sustainable. And when we take care of those kind of things, we make Savannah better. And this is indeed good government. Thank you, Mr. City Manager. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Appreciate
Mayor.
your speech last night, too.
Thank you very much, Alderman Palumbo.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Team Savannah. Thank you, Ron, Zach, for your presentation. Outstanding, because you've done a great job of articulating the issue and the needs. I think the most impressive portion of your proposal here is showing the level of funding need that we've already secured at 39%. And the level that we're underfunded based on the needs that we have. This isn't a pie-in-the-sky aspirational thing that we're asking for. There's a definitive need based on the models, capital programs, repairs, and construction improvements that we absolutely need for this community. And it was shared last night, and we'll say it again, that the last time that we experienced a direct hit from a hurricane was before the storms were named, the Sea Island hurricane. I mean, it's been that long. So we've been blessed, but we got to invest. And you've put together a very reasonable proposal here. I know fee is an F word, but we got to make sure to articulate to the public. And I want 4th District constituents to know that these are the answers that we've been waiting for. We need a directed stream, an investment stream that is staff-driven and data-driven to put those investments in the ground that's going to protect our neighborhoods and our communities, and truly to be able to impact and improve citywide. A couple of years back, what was it that I wore the pipe to Savannah City Council? I think I still have the PVC dust on it. And if you remember from that budget hearing, I believe we invested $5 million in capital improvements for stormwater. So based on the napkin math that I have here, and we're underfunded currently for the needs of today in 2024, by $245 million. And that's how lucky and blessed the city of Savannah has been. So to replicate that effort, I would have to wear that pipe to Savannah City Council 49 years in a row. And y'all, I love you, but no, I'm not going to serve that long, and I don't think we're going to live that long either. So we've got to find a better way and a dedicated stream of funding. Our mayor, in particular, has done an incredible job of harnessing, with Team Savannah, federal grant funding and shaking that tree for all that it's worth. But we need to be able to generate enough direct dollars here to be able to match grant funding, to be able to leverage those resources. And we can't depend upon other funding streams like SPLOST forever. Even though the public's been very generous in granting those dollars, we're still having a need of $245 million today, and we need to cover that gap. So I'm in full support, and here, do request that our city manager come back as soon as possible with an enterprise fund and a proposal for this council to be able to direct a stormwater utility for our city. I think it's going to make an enormous difference and set us on a better path.
Thank you. What I'm requesting, and I see you, is that there are two steps in this. The first thing is just to create the utility. Then ultimately we have to figure out how to fund it. I remember, and some of you might remember, the Atlanta sewer situation. And it was somewhat similar in just that you had councils kicking it down the road, and down the road, and then ultimately it becomes an untenable situation that has to be dealt with. And the financial outlay to be able to deal with what could have been handled incrementally for them was really, it was enormous. For us, we have positioned ourselves to be the most resilient, certainly the most sustainable city. And for us, part of that resiliency and part of that sustainability requires the need of us to be able to not only look ahead, but to be able to prepare ahead. And I think, again, this year, if we needed exhibit A, B, and C, we've seen that. 70% of our most violent storm events have been since 2015, and every indication is that it's going to get worse. And you're going to continue getting pictures from people saying, this is happening, and you're going to have to do the same thing that you've been doing, saying there's nothing we can really do about it. Here is an opportunity, and again, thank you, Alderman Palumbo, for reaching that out. We've shaken every tree we could shake. And we have tried to find every opportunity to be able to do that, and we've been quite successful. But ultimately, we're going to need a mechanism within our bureaucracy to be able to address this in a sustainable way. And we're going to have to find a way proactively that our citizens have to be able to pay into this. We've tried very hard. We have not raised taxes in this community in well over, 5-6 years? As a matter of fact, we've decreased it twice, I believe, in the last 6 years. And things still go up. Prices of stuff still go up. And I think we've been very generous in terms of making sure that our employees are well paid and all that. These things come at a cost. And so I just think we have to be able to find innovative, proactive ways of being able to address it. Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you so much, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, City Manager. Mr. Feltner and Mr. Hoffman, thank you all so much for your expertise in the area of our whole just drainage system and our utilities. Thank you all so much for that. Climate change is absolutely real. And this discussion is a part of climate change. With that being said, there's been a statement that's been said for several decades around here that this particular subject matter is just not a sexy subject matter, that the people can't see this, and it's not a vertical coming up out of the ground where people can see it. But due to climate change, due to aging infrastructure, just due to, the mayor made a statement last night at his State of the City address when he was talking about City Hall. And he said that City Hall has been around for the last 100, 200 years, and it's left on our charge to renovate and make whole the City Hall because it's never been done. Case in point of what we are talking about right now. I'm clear on what's under the ground, I know. And we are talking about aging. The mayor just made a few statements. He said, kicking it down the road. We know that in the last few decades, the subject of improving the infrastructure, improving the stormwater, improving the subject has been talked about. But the wonderful thing about it is, as Alderwoman Wilder Bryant just stated, this administration is about getting it done. So here we are. I am totally ready for this to happen because it is needed. What we need, what I would suggest, and that's coming from just hearing from a few of my constituents, we are talking about this, and I do believe in touching the people and bringing up front and close all matters and focusing on areas. And this focus matter would be the stormwater funding, and having some type of something that was done last night at the mayor's town hall, and also his state of just the city, the entire city coming together and seeing this, and we hearing from them. I'm pretty sure, we live in this city, so I'm pretty sure we all be talking and dancing to the same beat. That yes, it is time for us to get from underwater quickly. So I'm just trying to smooth this over, because some folks would want to make a mess of this, and it is not time for making this a mess. It is time to get this done. And talking about a fee that the city council want to increase, us paying some extra taxes and just making a mess of it. But this is not the time for that type of conversation. So in reference to we have over the years been dedicating funds with the SPLOST dollars, the general fund. This administration has been doing an excellent job in reference to federal and state grant funding, coming together P3-wise with the public-private partnerships. I mean, these funding sources are great, but as I've been saying, as other councils been saying, it takes hundreds of millions of dollars to get this done. So in order for that to happen, we've got to do something. We can't do the same thing, continuously doing the same thing. We've got to do something different. So we've got to come up with another type of method, and I think this proposal is what we need. Like our city manager has stated, we already have the water dedicated fund sources for our water and sewer. We live with the stormwater stuff. So it's time to get something done, Savannah. One thing I want to ask city manager and staff, if you all can just define again for us and the public the acronyms that you have, especially with the SWMP and the GEFA loans, so that when this is being played over and over again, the people will understand what we're talking about and follow along and understand this PowerPoint. So if you can do that for me.
Yeah, thank you for your comments. Obviously, the agenda that we put out, we gave those acronyms at the bottom, and what we'll do is incorporate those acronyms into the front of the PowerPoint, so as it starts to move around the community to the media or whatever, that we make sure we get those acronyms embedded within the presentation itself. Thank you.
All right. But tell me right now, what does the SW...
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, they're on your agenda, the single page I gave you. SWMP, Stormwater Management Program. GEFA, Georgia Environmental Finance Authority. We've got some other ones on there. MS4, Municipal Separate Storm Sewer System. SPLOST, everyone's pretty aware of. FEMA, we've got on there. And SWU, Stormwater Utility.
Okay.
So.
I just want you to voice it so when people are looking at this, they will understand. The other thing I'm pleased about it. Now, Mr. Felton, when you first came, I was not pleased about the first map that we had, talking about the Savannah capital improvement projects, drainage improvement, active projects at one time. But what this shows is equity in reference to distribution of our city. So I just want to make that noted, because if you go back some years ago, and I helped a map like this up, I was just disturbed because it showed clearly the despairs that was going on in the city in reference to stormwater. So thank you all so much for the focus, the work, the getting it done, and spreading it around the entire city. As it was stated about the South Side, and Alderman Purty is not here, but I'm here with him. Okay. So in reference to the South Side, it was stated clearly, and thank you all so much for talking about the modeling of the South Side, and it's this south portion of our city was the latest development of the city before the far west started this recent current development. But it was the South Side that was the newest part of our city. So thank you all so much for mentioning that, because it's an empty space if somebody's looking at this and saying, why is not anything going on the South? But the modeling is being done. You all are looking at it. So thank you all so much. And just a word for Alderman Purty in reference to his district. I think that's it, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Alderwoman Miller-Blakely.
Thank you so much. I just got through wading through rivers, ponds, you name it, getting here to this meeting. And I don't believe in taxing people, but in this particular case, I believe we desperately need it. I'm looking at a template from Garden City, stormwater utility customer bills. And my question to you, Mr. City Manager, is, are you going to, is our staff going to use this template to charge our residents and our businesses, or are you going to come up with something similar to this?
We're in the midst of that feasibility study. I think we're going to use the same tenets as Garden City and other neighboring jurisdictions that have used some measure of impervious area on the property to dictate the level of user fee associated with that. Just like in your water bill, it's, how much water do you use dictates your bill. In this case, it's going to be how much runoff do you produce because of impervious area that would dictate the fee. But we don't, we're just using that right now as an example, and we'll certainly look to that in other places as a model. But ultimately, we're going to be bringing some options to council about what's our level of service need, right? And what we currently pay for through general fund or SPLOST dollars, and what a fee would need to be to cover the entire cost, and then work to step it down based on what we think is appropriate for our residents and ratepayers. And so we'll be bringing those options to council, as directed as soon as possible, so that we can begin to have the discussion about what's the right rate for us.
Okay, thank you. I'm just looking, and this is for the public to hear this. Single-family residential per month, $4.75, based on what I'm looking at here with Garden City. And I don't think that that's too much to ask anybody to pay additionally with their water bill in order to get this stormwater situation taken care of. Thank you all for your presentation. And, public, y'all just need to know it's so desperately needed. Thank you.
Thank you, Alderwoman. So, ladies and gentlemen, I think our decision points are this. I think we can do nothing I mean, I don't think it's a good option, but we could do nothing. What I would ask you to do is for us to have consensus to ask the city manager during this budget cycle to create the stormwater utility. So basically to create the enterprise fund. And we're not talking about funding it, but creating it, because that's a step that has to take place. And then directing him to come back to us with some options, because it doesn't make sense for him to do the work about funding it if we're not going to create it. So if we're going to create it, direct him to come back to us with options about how it could be funded. And I think that would probably be the most prudent way for us to do it. So basically, we're creating a fund that it just exists, but nothing in it, essentially, and then figuring out how we can best fund it. I mean, we probably have some funding mechanisms already that could go into it from grants and things we've already received. But outside of that, talking about how we fund this into perpetuity.
Mr. Mayor.
Is there any objection to that? Yes,
I
ma'am.
support that recommendation.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, I
Anybody
do
else?
too.
Thank you.
Support it, sir.
Thank you.
It also might
Thank
be
you.
good to have some, and I'm sure you'll do this, some sessions with the public during the process.
Oh, absolutely. Just creating
to
it.
let them know what's before us. And the timing is great based on current events, recent events.
Yes. Yes, ma'am. Absolutely.
Well, thank you all. I appreciate that. So, Mr. Manager, present to us the mechanism to create the utility for this budget cycle, and then as soon as reasonably possible, come back to us with options by which we can do that. I know that'll take a little bit of time. It'll take some research, but I think that's just the best way to go.
It's a top priority for us. Yes, sir.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Zach. Thank you, Ron. We appreciate you all and your excellent work.
Great job.
You all have made me experts on stormwater.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. I'm going to ask Chief Joe Shiraus for our Public Affairs Service Center to just quickly run through some of the homework items we have for you related to our legislative agenda for this year, because it is coming up quick in the new year.
Let me start by just saying that, as you all know, each year we go to our state and federal government, but we go there with wish lists of things we want them to be able to work on. Sometimes we're playing offense, sometimes we're playing defense. I will tell you that we have been relatively successful on some of the things that we've been trying to do, and that's been because of the work of Joe Shearhouse and certainly because of our lobbyists. We've been on top of things, and so as you know, we start off with things that staff have presented, of things we're looking at. This is our opportunity to be able to weigh in, create a list. They come back to us with a list. We find the list down. We look at probabilities of things based on what we're hearing from our lobbyists, from the Georgia Municipal Association and other factors, and we kind of figure out where we want to go. So, Mr. Shearhouse, thank you for all your work. Let's go.
Thank you, Mayor. Joe Shearhouse, Acting Chief of Information and Public Affairs, and the purpose of today's presentation is to provide you an update on the next steps for the formulation of City Council's 2025 legislative agenda. The legislative process is an annual one. The session itself takes place in January through April. After that, there's a lot of bill analysis, committee review, and committee assignments. That goes into the summer, where there's study committee meetings, and follows into the fall, where we begin again the adoption of our agenda and advocacy efforts based upon that agenda. Today, this is one of the main purposes of the presentation, is to give City Council an update on where we are. We have assessed the climate moving forward into 2025 and had a lot of stakeholder discussions with Georgia Municipal Association, our local legislators, and others. And we've received some staff input based on the climate of 2025. And now we'd like to get City Council's input and perspective on legislative items we've identified and priorities of yours, so that we can move forward in the prioritization and adoption process. We've had some major accomplishments through the past few years. which we review here. I know many of you are familiar. It's important to point out that a large amount of our time in Atlanta is involved in defense of our home rule statutes that cities and municipalities currently have, and that's protection of the authority of local governments. One of our largest threats each and every year is legislative action that would preempt the authority of City Council to govern local issues locally. It consumes a large amount of our time and will continue to. Briefly wanted to review a few items that have come up this year and we're eyeing for your consideration and feedback. We're again going to look at impact fees and ways to waive those fees for affordable housing. We're going to look at a variety of different housing initiatives that can improve and add tools to our toolbox in order to provide more housing for our residents and other residents across the state. We've also are looking to improve some of the court processes that we face here locally in Recorder's Court due to some new bills that have passed. And we're again going to look for new and creative ways to use SPLOST funds that can be utilized to support housing efforts. Some of our policy positions, many are familiar to you all, and again, policy positions give us the ability through your approval to be nimble on issues that may pop up each legislative year that we can react to quickly with your approval. We have several. One is the defense of our home rule, support of public infrastructure projects, which include water and sewer, traffic and transportation, among many others, solutions to providing improvements for those experiencing homelessness, the expansion of a low-income tax credit, sustainability efforts matching with our 100% clean energy resolution, and tools to protect low-income residents who are experiencing drastic increases in their rental rates. So we're just at the beginning of this process for your involvement, and what I'd ask that you look forward to is contact from me and our team for your participation in this process and for what you're hearing from your residents and your communities of what issues are important from them that we can advocate for on the state level. We'll take your feedback, we'll incorporate it into our agenda, we'll go through a prioritization process, and then you'll see it in the coming month or so on an agenda for approval. So thank you for your time and look forward to working with you on this agenda.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to again highlight the work this council has not only a state lobbyist, we have a federal lobbyist. This has allowed us to really be on top of a lot of things. I think Mr. Sharehouse reiterated what I said before. Sometimes our work is playing defense. There is significant pushes to be able to limit the things local government can do and a variety of things. And so during the session, we're keeping our eyes open and literally at a moment's notice could go to Atlanta to play defense or testify or to offer our support against something that might negatively impact the city. So I want to thank Ms. Sharehouse, certainly the city manager, city attorney, who stand at the ready to be able to address those things. Are there any questions about this? Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Sharehouse, you do a great job. We appreciate you standing in the gap and doing amazing things that you've been able to do. But just one thing, as a personal privilege, is I would just like for you to keep your eye on Senate Bill number 51. It's the taxation for menstrual products. I think it's still there with some faction close to it. It's not a luxury item, and women all over this state and other states, if you could try, Georgia would be the 29th state that would not tax personal care items. Thank you so much, sir. You keep doing what you're doing, Joe. We're so proud of you. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Mayor, I want to ask you a question, sir.
Yes.
We were talking, several years in reference to a legislative item for children, the age to be changed from
Compulsory education.
Yeah, I was talking about that to a constituent and was telling them how that stayed in front of your mind for several years. What's happening with that, or is it?
What she's referring to there is right now, I guess, compulsory education in Georgia kids can go to school until they're 16 years old. When they get 16, they can decide they don't want to go to school anymore, and then parents or a judge can't make them go. We know, and all of us are old enough to remember when we were 16, we thought we knew everything and knew nothing. We know that if kids are not in school, are not forced to go to school, then that creates issues for the city because they're not educated, they're on the streets, and we know what happens. At one point, there was a major push from municipalities and school systems to do that. It just kind of fizzled away. And so the city of Savannah can't be the driver of that if school boards and their associations are not pushing that as well. So we got involved and we kind of co-opted it because there was some motion there, but it just never went anywhere. So, sometimes it pops back up, but it just hadn't really gone anywhere.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anything else? Yes, ma'am.
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Scharouse, for this presentation, but I would like for you to explain in your section where it says specific legislative priorities. Number 3, amend the definition of blighted property to include abandoned structures, lots, parcels, or properties to assist in redevelopment efforts. Explain that.
Yes, ma'am. Our housing team does a great job on acquiring certain properties under the eminent domain law and then selling those properties back in a better condition, sometimes to clear heirs property. But under state law, in order for us to redevelop those properties, it has to meet certain criteria. And one item we've noticed in the law that has caused us problems is when a structure does not exist on the property. That can happen for a variety of reasons, maybe a structural fire, maybe a collapse. But in this particular situation, when a property has no existing structure, we find it more difficult for us to use the eminent domain tool in order to redevelop that property and remove it from being blighted. So we're trying to improve the state law definition for what constitutes a blighted property in order for our team to continue to use that tool to redevelop some of these downtrodden, blighted properties.
Okay, that's in connection with the land bank?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Under consideration and review, support the increase of Recorder's Court technology fee.
Yes, ma'am. So our technology fee in Recorder's Court is currently at $10 and has been that way since 2003. It's something we're considering and reviewing. We're looking in surrounding communities who several have increased their technology fee recently. And the purpose of that technology fee is to make access to the courts more easier and more accessible. A good example of that is virtual courts for individuals who may be out of town or don't have the ability to have transportation to court. It's an item that we put under the consideration category because we still want to do some additional research into surrounding communities and make sure we properly understand the impact of that associated fee and a potential increase.
Okay. And number 4, support a constitutional amendment to allow for the exemption or freezing of property taxes for low-income housing tax credits or supported rent and income-restricted housing.
Yes, ma'am. We've seen large property growth in our area and a lot of areas in Savannah, and this particular item would allow us to freeze property rates for the property owner of that particular property in exchange for them freezing the rental rate. This item will be a challenge, though. It requires a constitutional amendment, which is a heavy lift and difficult to do, but something we want to continue to look at and explore.
And I'll add, this is an item that has been on this council's agenda and the prior council's agenda for many years based on the feedback of members of this council. And so we want to be clear about what the statewide mechanism in order to do that would be.
I understand that. I want the public to know what it is we are asking for. And my last one, number 5, allow local governments the ability to sell unclaimed confiscated weapons at auction or have them destroyed.
I'll deal with that one because that's been mine for years.
Yeah.
Essentially, right now, we have guns that have been unclaimed. They have no evidential value. And right now, essentially, the police departments have to put them back out to auction and be sold again. And so we're asking, it's really worded a little differently than we had it. It just allows us the ability to decide what we want to do with them. And so for us, if we want to destroy them, that we would have the ability to destroy them. We think it's unmentionable that we would have weapons that might have been used in crimes before, and then we're putting them back out on the streets to be sold again at discounted rates, which of course we know fund some of our challenges.
Yeah.
So I would suggest that we change this because that's why I'm concerned. It says the ability to sell unclaimed as opposed to just getting rid of them. So if we're going to get rid of them, let's get rid of them. But if we're going to sell them, then
because
we
we're
can-
talking about state law, I think it would be to allow municipalities to make the decision. So then if it changes, we would decide how that happens. So,
Exactly.
So some might want to sell, but I mean, I think we would probably want to destroy. But just give us the option to do that right now. State law does not give us the option to decide that.
And we can change the context there.
Thank you.
The wording there is strategy. Sometimes it's easier to just add 2 words
Right.
to a bill and destroy rather than rewrite an entire provision because it's a little bit more seen as a technical tweak, right, but would achieve the same goal for us. I think that's exactly why we wrote it that way, but we thank you for the feedback. We'll make sure that our intent is evident in our legislative agenda wording.
thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so ladies and gentlemen, this is a participatory process. We need all of you to engage with Mr. Sharehouse, and certainly I know that you will. And so any questions, any further questions? Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, we have a show cause hearing. I'm going to ask that we take a 10-minute recess, allow us to reset. So we'll come back, we'll say at 12:41, and we'll begin the show cause hearing. So we stand in recess till then. Sure. Thank you. Oh, let me.
It's very cold in here.